This is actually an accident that I ended up here, and I wasn't 100% sure if I was in the right little village. But this is Aldbourne in Wiltshire, and this is where Band of Brothers, Easy Company, were when they were based in the UK. Well, I wasn't 100% sure it was the right place until I saw this bus, and that pretty much convinced me. Stephen Ambrose Historical Tours. Strangely enough, it's a Dutch bus, so I would have thought they start here, but anyway. So this is Aldbourne. I'm going to have a quick look around. As country villages go, this is actually quite big. There's a line of flags. Looks like all the allies from the war, Scotland, England, Wales. I think there's a Dutch one. Is that an Australian one and an American one at the end? There's a lovely house here called the Old Manor. A very nice little village. And one thing I have to say, I've been here about 20 minutes now. That's the church. It must have been really difficult to leave here because it is a pretty little village. There's a noise of traffic today, but I'm sure that wasn't the case in 1944. But I'm not quite sure where they were based in the village, though. I'll have to have a look out for that. And this is looks like the main green. It's a lovely church. This is typical of little English villages, little pubs with outdoor tables. Considering how small the place is, that's 2 pubs I've seen so far. Okay, this is the moving from the main green back to the where I started. Very picturesque village. Surprisingly, at least so far anyway, I haven't seen any overly commercialised Band of Brothers mausoleum sorts of stuff, which is quaint, I suppose. I mean, they do get the big tour buses in it, so in a way I'm surprised they haven't, but maybe I'm just in the wrong place. I'll have a wander to another part of the village. See the beautiful little cottages they've got in here. I definitely can't find anything commercialised in the 101st being here. Just tons and tons of nice pretty cottages. And a couple of pubs. I was about to head off and I spoke to the tour rep on the Ambrose Tours, and he's given me some pointers for the town. So, this pub was where the officers went, the Crown, and I've been here for 40 minutes, and that is the first reference I've seen to anything to do with the 101st. Apparently the NCOs used the Blue Boar bar, so that was the bar on the green that was featured earlier. But I asked the tour guide if there was any particular features of Aldbourne to do with 101st, and he pointed out probably the only one that I was really interested in. So opposite is the bit large house, and specifically the one there, which today is a post office, but in the time was, in 1944, was a store. And that is where Winters and Welsh were based. So the Barneses owned the shop, I think, and that is Winters' room, the one on the right. So that's Aldbourne. So this is the side view. I've returned to the church, because there's a Dick Winters related story here. Now, apparently when he arrived in Aldbourne, he came here on his first Sunday, and then he sat in the cemetery for a bit of peace and quiet, and there was a couple tending a grave, and it was the Barneses, and they were tending the grave of their son, who was in the RAF and had recently died. And the Barneses came over and sat on the same bench that Winters was on and started talking. And that's, as they say, history. I'll see if I can find the grave on the other side. Alright, it's further up in the cemetery. I should really have turned my brain on. If he was in the British service, he would have a Commonwealth War grave. And lo and behold, here it is. So, Corporal L.J. Barnes, Royal Air Force. Not sure if it'll come out because of the light. Let me have a look. Royal Air Force, 12th of June 1942, age just 26. So, I wonder if that's the bench. There's a bench right at the top of the hill here overlooking the cemetery. There's a memorial marker on it, I'm going to have a look. So just to continue the story with the Barneses, shortly after, so they met Dick Winters, shortly after the villagers were asked if they would house officers, put them up in rooms, and no, it doesn't mention it at all. It's Muriel Constance Foster of Ivy Cottage Memorial, so I'll ignore that. It's the church though. So yeah, so the Barneses had a room for 2 people, and so they said as long as Dick Winters was one of the 2 officers, no problem at all. So Welsh and Winters moved in with the Barnes, and then after the war, Winters and the Barneses became lifelong friends. So that's the Blue Boar pub. So that's where the NCO's non-commissioned officers drank. And apparently, I think I've lost my bearings a bit. It was in this direction behind these cottages that there used to be a stable, and that was where a number of the soldiers were billeted. It doesn't exist anymore. It was taken apart, although ironically the only surviving bit is in Toccoa. Right, it's time for me to leave. But the final comment is something I said earlier. This is, I would have thought it'd be lucrative to have set up stuff with referencing the 101st and Band of Brothers and all of that. Apart from the fact that the Stephen Ambrose Tours come here, I see no other commercialisation. Even the pub's only got one little thing. They might have stuff inside, but I'm not filming in there. But there's only one reference to the 101st, which is amazing. Anyway, that's Aldbourne for you.